Welcome to everyone to M365 UK. We didn't have an event last month in August, so hopefully everyone's had a good break of summer and both online, in person, wherever you were. And thank you for all those who've just joined as well. And hopefully we got more people coming in as well, so that's great. And so this is our 15th edition, and so this has been going on on a monthly basis. And we've got about over 60 who's registered, so it's kind of really thankful to all of you, and hopefully you're still finding this interesting, the topics, variety of topics that I try to bring across. And obviously for those of you who's just joined, that that the event is being recorded, so always try my best to make it available on Fridays. And for those who are new to M365 UK, a big welcome to you as well. And so for those of you who frequently tune in, you will notice that this is a different format of meeting now. And from here on, we intend to keep it this format. So no more Teams Live event. That has its place, but now it's just different. So hopefully you'll appreciate. And like with these events, we appreciate obviously the speakers' time in this, but obviously we're kind of open to each other, so please please respect others in terms of how you ask questions and any appropriate comments. So we want no kind of offensive language of any kind, so that'll be helpful. But yeah, in the meantime, feel free to ask any questions. How it works. So just feel free to do that. And I think with that, I just want to introduce my two good friends who I've known for many years. And so welcome to Albert Hoitingh from the Netherlands, and Serge Luca from Belgium. And hardly needs any introduction, these two great speakers. But I think it's we got a first session which is around kind of on the cloud access security broker, so everything about cloud app security, and it's demo packed session. And I know for me, every time I look into this, there's always things changes. Is the nature of how Microsoft 365 works, both and Power Platform. So looking forward to that, but we'll kind of come to Albert in a little few minutes. We'll take a break around 5 p.m. here, UK time, of course, and 10 minutes. So just kind of grab water or coffee or something, and still feel free to ask questions during that time. And then we'll kind of resume at around 5 with Serge Luca. We'll tell everything about the advanced BPM. And I know this is probably, he's presented this a few times, but every time when I see his session is always different and new. And so really looking forward to that as well. For those of you who who don't know me, I'm Chirag Patel. I live and work in London, and techchirag.com is probably the best way to get to me. And I'm a Microsoft 365 consultant, work with partners in the UK, and really kind of come from SharePoint SQL Server database background. But as opportunities have arisen over the last 15-20 years, I, like many of you, stepped into Microsoft 365 or Office 365 before. And so, feel free to reach out. I try and obviously speak at many events as possible, because that's the only way I can learn. But I'm also a BCS, British Chartered Society for the IT professionals. So I'm also an assessor there as well. So I get to see lots of people's CVs and validate their IT experience in the industry. So it's not always about Microsoft MVPs, although we're grateful that we get to share and learn from the community, and there's a huge community out there as well. So feel free to reach out. And M365 UK is the Twitter handle, and we have LinkedIn page as well, Microsoft 365 UK. So feel free to subscribe to those. And obviously the meetup, as you know, it's meetup.com/M365 UK. So yeah, so with that kind of, if you like, if we kind of kick off with Albert, and I think, like I mentioned, really appreciate for giving up your time, Albert. And Albert is a 4-time MVP and really kind of all things cybersecurity, and many of you are following him, I'm sure. And so it's great to have you, Albert, and thanks very much for being here. And it's over to you. Thanks.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much, Chirag. Always a pleasure to be invited to speak at the user group or the meetup. Well, I've already been introduced. Albert Hoitingh, working for a company in the Netherlands called Inspark. And well, one of the things I'm really interested in is anything to do with compliance, security, cybersecurity, and mostly related to Microsoft 365. So that's why I wanted to talk to you about cloud app security. This is going to be a session where I'm going to show you, well, a lot of things, but the reason I wanted to do a session like this is that I experience a lot of hesitancy towards cloud app security, or a bit of a lack of awareness. What is it? What can you do with it? Why should I use cloud app security if I'm able to do so instead of the built-in Microsoft 365 options? So I'm going to show you a couple of those scenarios. It's not going to be like a sales pitch or something like that. So I'm not here to really push you towards cloud app security, but cloud app security, or MCAS, as the product is known from Microsoft, really does have a lot of advantages. So having said that, let's start with a little definition. I'll be bringing up definitions quite a lot during this session, but the first one is, what is cloud app security? Well, if we're talking about Microsoft Cloud App Security, or MCAS, we basically are talking about a cloud access security broker. You probably have heard the acronym or before, CASB. So we're really talking about a CASB, and even as early as 2012, this kind of platform was already available. And the definition, which is stated here by Gartner, really doesn't do it credit. It's placed between your internal users, basically, and their access to the cloud, cloud apps, cloud information, etc., etc. And I'll go into that a bit further, and as it relates to Microsoft 365 as well. So if we're talking CASB in a broader sense, that's basically the functionality, or the definition. Microsoft Cloud App Security is the platform which was introduced by Microsoft some time ago. If we look at Microsoft Cloud App Security, there's basically four great pillars of functionality. We've got the discovery and accessing of risks, controlling access to certain apps or to certain information, protecting information, and detecting threats. And if we want to delve a little bit deeper into this, we'll see that, for example, when we're going for discovery, when I'm going to show you Cloud App Security in a couple of minutes, you'll see those pillars there as well. If we go into discovery, we can discover cloud apps, for example. Which cloud apps are used by our users within our environment? Most of the time until very recently, we needed the logs from our firewalls to be able to detect that traffic. So it was really based on people going to the office, using Office 365, but also Facebook and perhaps Google Drive and you name it. And Cloud App Security could really provide you with an insight into those cloud apps. Not just that, it gives you an overview of probably Shadow IT. It also gives you an overview of what kind of app is this? Is this a commonly used app, for example, Dropbox, or is it an app which isn't that really well known within the environment, and which might be suspicious? It might be an app that a hacker created to really lure your users towards to harvest user IDs and passwords, for example. So there's a really big database of apps, and Microsoft maintains that database, which you can also look into to see, okay, what kind of apps are these? Do they comply with our standards, etc. Like I said, not too long ago, you really needed to have those logs from your firewalls. With the introduction of Windows Defender ATP, Advanced Threat Protection, those logs are basically being sent using the endpoint as well. So you really don't need that firewall construction to really have that insight into shadow IT. The other thing is controlling the access, and that's where Azure AD also comes in. I think a lot of you already know about conditional access and zero trust, not thrust, that's another thing. And what MCAS adds to that mix is what we call session-based conditional access. So we can really monitor the session between an endpoint, a user, and, for example, Office 365. And I'll show you how that works, for example, with Microsoft Teams, and what you can do with that kind of interaction between Azure AD and Microsoft Cloud App Security. The other one is protecting information. To be very honest, MCAS was until very recently one of the only platforms you could use to have labels, Microsoft information protection labels, sensitivity labels applied automatically to, for example, SharePoint Online or OneDrive. Nowadays, that's part of Microsoft 365. But until a couple of years ago, MCAS did provide that functionality as well. So it can detect sensitive information. It can provide you with information on specific documents or specific information, and it can even label or remove labels from specific information. It also has a built-in data loss prevention engine, and that's where the overlap really is within, for example, Office 365. But within MCAS, the options are, well, much more enhanced. So I'll show you some of those policies in a couple of minutes. And the fourth pillar is detecting threats. You get a really comprehensive insight in any alerts which might be created by the system. For example, users granting access for a specific app which you don't know, users which have been compromised, etc., etc. This is kind of like the information you also could get from Azure AD Identity Protection. What MCAS brings to the mix is really to have an holistic overview. And so if you have a specific user threat, what kind of activity has this user been doing the last couple of weeks within SharePoint, for example, which file has been accessed, etc., etc. So it's much more comprehensive. So these are the pillars. There's a couple of scenarios you can apply these pillars to. For example, I already mentioned that I want to have an overview of any apps using OAuth, the modern authentication, to see are there any applications I don't trust within my organization, which might be because that's a hacking attempt by a hacker, for example. Preventing downloads. That's somewhat part of Microsoft 365 as well, of course, sensitivity labels. But I'll show you how MCAS can really create a policy based on very specific components, like what kind of client is used, what kind of document, sensitivity is based on that document to prevent it from download, or very simple, just preventing downloads from a specific location. An overview of documents labeled, but also being shared by external parties. If you look at the built-in functionality of Microsoft 365, you can get a lot of information on labeled documents, also sharing actions, external parties. In a couple of minutes, I'll just show you the built-in view from MCAS, which gives you an overview within a couple of milliseconds of any labeled document which has been shared with an external party, for example. And the other one, and again, these are just a couple of scenarios. It's not the whole spectrum, of course, but one of the built-in policies for MCAS is to detect and block ransomware that uses Microsoft Threat Intelligence It detects if there's any ransomware going, being stored in SharePoint, for example, or OneDrive, and, for example, quarantining that file if that is detected. So these are a couple of the scenarios, and I'll show you a couple of them in a couple of minutes. First of all, again, back to some definition or what's in a name, because if you're going to look at Microsoft Cloud App Security, you'll notice that there's a lot of different licensing options. Well, again, nothing new within Microsoft, I guess. But yeah, for MCAS, it also applies, unfortunately. You have basically three options. First of all, there's the option here, number one, that's called Cloud App Security Discovery. That's only the discovery part, the Cloud App catalog, the database of cloud apps, and also discovering your cloud apps within your environment. If you have Azure AD Premium 1, which is part of Microsoft 365 E3, of course, and EMS E3, then you can use that already. So you can have that insight into Shadow IT. If you want to go beyond that and go and look at the scenarios I just told you about and which I'm going to show you, then you need Office 365 Cloud App Security. Although that's limited to Office 365, you get a lot of functionality. There's some limitations on the functionality on this. For example, if you want to have that insight into Shadow IT, you can use the log files from your firewalls, for example. These can be added based on a process where MCAS has a connection to your firewall, and basically that's automatic. But in this case, with Office 365 Cloud App Security, you're really limited to manually uploading those logs to MCAS. And that's just one example of the limitations in functionality. It is part of Office 365 E5 and Microsoft. There's Microsoft. No, that's not correct. Microsoft 365 E3. No, that's not correct. That should be E5 as well. That's the license you really need. There's also Microsoft Cloud App Security, and that's option 3. And there you get the full-blown functionality for Microsoft Cloud App Security, which also includes being able to govern non-Microsoft Cloud apps. One specific example is being able to apply sensitivity labels to documents stored in Amazon S3 buckets, for example, or in Dropbox or in Google Drive. If you have the enterprise editions for those cloud apps. So that's the whole shebang. That's all functionality. And as you can see on the screen already, there's a lot of different types of licenses which are part of that deal. So one of them is, for example, E5 compliance, which is an add-on to Microsoft 365. If you have that license, then you can use MCAS in its full glory. So these are the three main options you have. Again, just to reiterate, the Cloud App Security Discovery you can already use if you have Microsoft 365 E3. Okay, just a little recap on how it works. I already told you that some time ago, but basically, if you have your organization here and you have your cloud apps here, Microsoft Cloud App Security is like a broker between those two worlds. So if you want to have insights into Shadow IT or into cloud apps or into the behavior of users towards specific apps, then you use this route over here. And again, this graphic hasn't been updated really frequently by Microsoft, unfortunately, but right now you can also use Windows Defender ATP to really have that cloud traffic being logged in MCAS to get that overview. For the cloud apps themselves, for example, Office 365, that's already part of the mix. If you start using MCAS, you already have that connector. It's going to connect to things like the audit log in Office 365, Azure AD logs, etc., etc. Basically, the graph, the Microsoft graph, the Microsoft Security graph, to get that information in its dashboard. And then you're already set up to really start using DLP rules, setting alerts, you name it. So this is the high level view, and I'll just skip this one because I'm just going to show you how it works in a couple of minutes. Just over here, this is one of the settings screens for MCAS. If you look at the options, you get some things like, well, email settings. Well, those aren't really important. Over here, you see the integration with other security components for Microsoft, like Defender for Identity, which protects your on-premises AD, for example, identity protection. And also what you see over here is things like snapshot reporting. So you can, if you have your log from your firewall, you can upload it over there, and then it's going to be processed by MCAS, and then you can have all those overviews. Also over here is the automatic log upload. So if you have the ability to well, configure your connection to your firewalls, you'll be doing that over here. One last remark on this screen, by the way. If you really want to start using MCAS, and there's trial environments available, and I have some links at the end of the presentation. If you really want to start using the cloud discovery and see how that works, just one little tip. If you go to snapshot, you know what? I'll show you. That's better. Basically, you can have your there's some default reporting or firewall logs there already you can use to really start having some insights. So I'll show you where you can find that as well. And over here are the what we call the app connectors. So if you start using MCAS, for example, the Office 365 version of MCAS, you already get two, which are Office 365 and Microsoft Azure, because, well, Azure is, of course, the platform where Azure AD resides. So you get those as part of the mix. And in my case, I have some other environments as well connected, so some AWS environments as well. Connecting those is really, really easy. Once you connect them, you can start using MCAS. Okay, well, that's the theory. So let me start and show you some of the things you can do with MCAS. As well, as Chirag said, it should be a demo loaded session, so let's delve in. I'll show you MCAS first on how it works and how it looks like. So let me just switch to one of my dashboards over here. This is my MCAS environment. As you can see, really tidy, not a lot of alerts, unfortunately. Well, please be aware this is a very small demo environment. I do have some OAuth apps which have been well detected by the system. One of them is called I'll Get Your Credentials, so you probably might be aware what kind of app this is. And well, using MCAS, I can really stop this app from doing what it's intended to do. But this is MCAS, this is your dashboard. And well, let's start with the little tip I wanted to give you if you really want to look at MCAS in some more depth and want to start playing with it in a demo environment, for example. If you go to the settings, and if you go to over here, and if you go to snapshots, you'll see I have some snapshot reporting. Why do I use these? Well, sometimes clients don't want you to really use, or they don't have MCAS, or they want to use it to have an insight into shadow IT, but they really don't want you to, do a connection to their firewalls. Well, that's really not a problem if you can have access to the firewall logs themselves. Then you can have your app discovery as well. And that's over here. That's called a snapshot. And if I create one over here, it says, okay, do you want to create one? Yes, I want to. Over here, you have things like your name. You also have to select which kind of firewall or proxy you use. So let's say I'm using a Cisco firewall. And over here, very important, I can anonymize information. So if I don't want any IP addresses or usernames or whatever in those logs to be presented using MCAS, then I can anonymize that information. Oh, demo already exists, of course. Okay, now I can upload those logs. And at this moment, I don't have any logs available. So, well, that's a bother. But like I said, if you really want to test this out, why not? Then yeah, this is the one I'm looking for. Over here, it says verify your log format. So MCAS is really picky about this. It really does have a specific log format it requires to be able to process the information. But what you see over here, this is the very interesting one, download a sample log. So if I want to play around with MCAS, get a feel of what it looks like, then I can simply download that sample log, and just when it's downloaded, I'll just, yep, it's now being downloaded. I'll just go to over here. And now it's being generated. That's it. If you really want to play around again with app discovery, then this is the way you can go about this. But this doesn't have really anything to do with Microsoft 365 as is. So let's go back to that. And first of all, back to the dashboard. Cloud App Security, like I said, has different functions, and you'll see those functions over here as well. I've got my discovery, which is the discovery of well, IP addresses, user. This is based on those logs. So this is the traffic, your network traffic you can analyze. Again, over here again is the snapshot report. So that's another way to get to that log, creating that log demo log, for example. And over here, I've got my catalog, and this is the database I was talking about. So these are the cloud apps which Microsoft, well, keeps up to date. One fun fact, every Microsoft application over here always gets a 10 score. So yeah, that's, well, I probably makes sense, but let me see if I can have some other scores as well. Here you have apps which does, well, have a score as a 0. So that's really, really low. So let's open one up. And this is the information which you get from Microsoft. So in this case, they only know that it's protected against drown, but it doesn't support SAML. And there's a lot of information which is lacking. And this kind of information you can use if you discover that there's users within your environment using well, specific cloud apps which score really, really low on a specific category, for example. Again, if we go to the Microsoft stack, you'll see that, and I'll just go to things like, well, here, virtual agents. Well, that's nice for Serge. Over here, everything is trusted, data ownership, GDPR, etc. Oh, file sharing, there's a problem with the file sharing. Well, again, just go look around. This is part of your standard license as well. But more interesting, the link to Microsoft 365. So if we look at, for example, I'll just show you a couple of scenarios. First of all, I'll go to Investigate. Investigate gives you an insight into any apps which have been connected to Cloud App Security. And as you can see over here, I can, well, I can see what kind of OAuth applications are used. I can see the activity log, which is, for example, sharing activity or creating a file, modifying a file, you name it. I can see what users and accounts have done within my environment. And the fun thing is I get a holistic view of that. So perhaps some of you might say, well, this is information which is also available in either the audit log or in the Azure AD log or in etc. Yeah, it is. But in this case, I get a holistic overview of all that information. So, for example, here are our files within my environment, either in OneDrive, for example, or in SharePoint, and you'll see any file is valid. I've got JPEGs, news images, web ASPX files. But let's see what I can do. So, for example, over here I have a PowerPoint file. If I go over here, there's a lot of options I can do just from MCAS right now. So let's say I want to remove the sensitivity label because, well, this document has a sensitivity label. How do I know this? Well, let's just simply open this one up. And here it is. It's being labeled. I've got a label called public. And over here, it says label. So I've got that information as well, just from going to this dashboard, for example. So let me just remove it. Okay, and it's now removing that sensitivity label, for example. This is one of the functions which I can use within Cloud App Security. I also see that there's been a policy, and I'll go into policies in a couple of minutes, but there's a policy I have called files shared externally, and that's been activated on this file right now. Why? Probably because it has been shared externally, so I can have an insight into that as well. So I'll look at that in a couple of minutes. Over here, I see there's a lot of collaborators. Well, here in the Netherlands, that's kind of a nasty word to be a collaborator, but well, we know what it means within a collaboration environment. So over here, I can see, okay, it's stored in a site called Anmasmol, and I've got my SharePoint default members. If I open this one up, okay, there's at least one from my environment, and I've got here an external user. Okay, let's see what he has. If I was talking about a holistic view, so right now I'm just opening the detail pane of this user, for example. So I have here, well, when was this user last seen? And well, not too many information because this is a guest user, for example. So if I go to this one, for example, my internal user. No, not too many information as well. Okay, no alerts, unfortunately. That's I'll just show you the alerts in a couple of minutes, but okay, let me just go back. So if I want to, I can, for example, let's just remove all external users, for example. Up. So now I've removed the label. I've removed the external users for this document, and well, as you can see, I don't have to open SharePoint, OneDrive, or whatever. I just have a overview right now of all that information. If I want to, I can also go to the hierarchy of the document. So where is this document stored? So I'll just look at the hierarchy, and I see, okay, this is the site, share documents. Then I've got a folder, and over here I have my PowerPoint document. So also, I don't have a need to open SharePoint right now. I can have it. I can access it over here directly, for example. As you can see over here, I can even export any activity based on this folder. If you want to, if you have a user who says, well, I just simply want to know what has been happening around this folder or this document, MCAS can just provide you with that information. But this is a very comprehensive list, and it's really not well formatted. It's an overview. I've got a lot of information, but there's fortunately an option to create queries, and already I have a query over here, which is called stale documents, and if you can look over here, you see that it was modified earlier, or at least 180 days ago. So this is really documents that have been around in my environment for a long time. So well, perhaps they should be looked at. But I also added this one: access level equals public or public internet or external, which basically means for MCAS that I can have an overview of externally shared documents, for example. So over here I have, I have some documents, though these are my external collaborators again, and within a couple of seconds I get this overview. Let's say I also want to have, for example, I want to have the sensitivity label. Let's say I want to have an overview of documents shared externally, which have the highly confidential financial information label applied. Well, it didn't match your files, and I know why, because I just have to close this one, because I work a lot with sensitivity labels within my demo environment. So older than 180 days, that really doesn't happen. So over here, I have 2 documents which have been labeled with this label and have been shared with external parties. So, and I'll just show you over here. It's got 2 labels, and it's got, well, Azure encrypted, that's a system label basically, but over here I have my label which I selected. So again, you can also use Microsoft 365 for this, of course. You've got your overview and the label overview, but yeah, with just a couple of clicks, I have this overview as well in MCAS. Another thing, if we look at users and accounts, you'll see a lot of users over here as well. And let me just show you, just one sec, I'll just go over here. And yeah, over here I have accounts. And if you look at this account, you'll see that it's an external account in my case, Motion 10. But if you look at this, I can again have a holistic overview. So I have a guest user in my case. I can see, well, which files have been shared with this user, for example, or what has this user been up to the last couple of months, for example, or do they have specific alerts? For example, the identity has been compromised. So let's see if this one will get me some information. And if you look carefully, you'll see that the queries which are based around that information aren't really that complicated. I just have to add collaborators equals and then the username. And as you can see over here, I get an overview of any documents shared with a specific user. So that's one of the other functions for Cloud App Security. Okay, this is basically your investigation, your activity files, etc. So you really have an overview for your security officers, for example, to really look at what's going on. Are there any things which we might need to investigate, etc. Another scenario for Cloud App Security is to use conditional access, and for that we don't only need Microsoft Cloud App Security, but we also need, of course, Azure AD conditional access. And I'll show you that how that works. I'll try here to log in using, I'll be logging into Microsoft Teams, for example. So let's go to Teams in this case. And perhaps the session has been, oh no, the session is still there. Unfortunately, this is in Dutch, but as you might have noticed already, this isn't something you normally see when you're logging on to Teams. You see here in Dutch, toegang tot Microsoft Teams wordt bewaakt, which is basically the access to Microsoft Teams will be monitored. And it's being monitored by Microsoft Cloud App Security. So this is a conditional access rule I set, and I'll just show you where you can find this. And right now, if I go to Teams, you'll notice that the Teams URL itself, let's hope it works. It's still teams.microsoft.com, but there's been an addition, .mcas.ms. So any traffic to and from Teams in my tenant for specific users which have been part of my conditional access policy is now being routed through Microsoft Cloud App Security. And that means that we can monitor those sessions and have some actions based on those sessions. So, for example, let me go to a specific team, for example. Let's go to, yeah, I've got here my expert environment. And I'll just try, okay, I've got, well, 2 documents, no problem really. Let's just try to download them, for example. So I'll say download. Oh, your download has been blocked. Again, well, this is in English, unfortunately. So this is Microsoft Cloud App Security in action. This is a very easy and not too dedicated or detailed Cloud App Security policy right now. I just told Cloud App Security to block any files coming from, well, in this case, Teams, but also SharePoint Online, for that matter, or also if you would try to open the document using a app on a desktop, for example, because that's also a download action. Perhaps some of you might notice that it did download something, and that's a text file. And if I open a text file, and it's over here. You probably won't be able to see this because I'm sharing a different screen right now, but the text file basically says, well, you try to log this, you tried to download this file from Teams that has been blocked due to policies, and you get some information on the file and its size. That's basically what the text file says. So this is, again, Microsoft Cloud App Security in action, monitoring the session. And, well, how do we configure that? Well, the things we need to do, and I'm just looking, yeah, here it is. Basically, the thing we need to do, we can find in Azure AD for this. Over here, you see I've got my Teams via MCAS rule. And if I open this one up, you'll see that over here, I have specific conditions. I have one app included, which in my case is Teams. I'll just see if it, yeah, there it is. So it only works if I access Teams right now. The condition is basically just the browser or the mobile app, so I can have some, well, these are basic conditional access rules. If anyone familiar with the conditional access rules from AD, this really isn't that much of a rocket science, of course, but the control is. So this basically says, okay, what kind of conditions need to be in place and who needs to have those conditions placed on them, for example, and for which applications. And over here, I have my session control. So this is, if I open this one up, here it is, block download. That's all there is. But again, this is a very broad net, of course. So this blocks any download from Teams for everyone which is part, who is part of this conditional access policy. If you don't want that, that's no problem. Then you can say, I want to use a custom policy. And that custom policy, that's where MCAS comes in. So if I go to MCAS, for example, here I have a specific conditional access or session-based access rules. Let me just open one up. No, this isn't the one I want. Sorry. Let me see. Because of the time, I'll just skip this one as well. But basically what you do in MCAS, you create a session-based policy rule. And when Teams access, users access Teams, then that policy will be enacted. And that might just be blocking downloads for specific files which have specific sensitivity labels applied, for example, or blocking access to Teams for users which are using a non-compliant device, for example. So this is the session-based conditional access, which again uses Azure AD and Microsoft Cloud App Security. And the only thing you really have to do is simply say block downloads, and that's it. Let me go back to Cloud App Security. So we've got some scenarios now. We've covered some. Basically, if we want to go back to the menu over here, we see two options there still. One of them is control, the other is alert, and I'll just go to alert in a couple of minutes. But if I go to policies, here I can automate things. So the investigation thing, the discovery thing, that's more or less an insight into your Office 365 environment. With my policy, I can automate things. I can even use Power Automate to automate things. So I'll just show you where you can find that as well. But right now, for example, if I go to these policies, you'll see I have different kinds of policies. These are all the policies I have. I can go to information protection, for example. And well, as you can see over here, I've got some demo policies here as well. I'll just see if I can show you one that's called Even kijken. Here it is. Block highly confidential for download. And just to show you how that works. Again, very simple. The policy has things you might expect from a policy. So there's a severity, there's a category, so you can really manage that in this case. In this case, I just say, if an app called SharePoint Online, if there's any activity, for example, the sensitivity label equals, and then I can have, for example, highly confidential. I can, for example, block the download, for example. And this is an example, for example, this is an example for that session-based control. So this I can connect this policy, for example, to the session-based conditional access rule, for example. So in which case, Microsoft Cloud App Security will check what kind of information is being downloaded from SharePoint Online. Does the information have this sensitivity label? And if so, then block the download. And if you want to do some other actions, for example, send an alert, etc., or like I mentioned, I can even create a playbook in Power Automate. So Cloud App Security and Power Automate do have some integration. So if this policy creates an alert, then I can even escalate that to Power Automate to do even more workflow related stuff, basically. Again, you see over here, it's a session-based control, and it states over here, to block access from mobile and desktop apps, please create an access policy. And that's because the policies within Microsoft Cloud App Security have different types. So if I want to create a policy, I have different kinds of types. The activity policy is, for example, a user trying to log in from a location we don't support. And then I can have some actions. A session policy, again, is based on that conditional access rule for session-based monitoring of traffic. A file policy, let's just create a file policy, for example, really looks at files within your environment, files which have been, for example, externally shared or have been modified after a certain date or time. Or, for example, let's just add the file type equals a spreadsheet, for example, and the sensitivity label. I'll just go into this for just a couple of seconds. Just bear with me. Let's say it's called confidential IBAN, for example. So now I have my filters, and now this policy will act on any document which is stored in any location which is part of Cloud App Security. So that might be SharePoint Online, OneDrive, and you'll see some other options as well. Just to go back to this one, you already saw two options for this: Microsoft Information Protection and Cloud App Security. You'll also see the same one if you go into a policy for data loss prevention. You'll see, and I'll just show you over here, that's called the inspection method, for example. Cloud App Security is fully integrated with Microsoft 365 classification methods for sensitivity labels, for data governance, for data loss prevention, you name it. But it still has its built-in model for detecting sensitive information. That really doesn't, there's no big gap between those two. And I think probably Microsoft will deprecate the built-in options in the time to come. But right now, if you look at policies and creating policies, don't be surprised to that you can select either Cloud App Security itself or Microsoft Information Protection, for example. And over here, I have the built-in categories for Cloud App Security, for example. But in my case, I want to have the IBAN. And if I look at the inspection method, for example, which is mostly used for DLP, you'll see that the built-in DLP, does contain some more sensitive information types, for example. So having said that, this is these are my filters, and these filters are going to act on my my data sources for SharePoint or Office 365. Those are OneDrive and SharePoint Online. SharePoint Online, of course, is also used by Teams, so that's being part of that as well. But as you can see, as my environment also has some connections to other cloud apps, I can even extend this, for example, to web services, Amazon Web Services in this case. The actions might not be that comprehensive, because if I go to SharePoint Online, you'll see I've got a lot more options there because of the tight integration between those Microsoft platforms. But still, if this policy is being kicked off, then, for example, in Dropbox, I can even just remove the file entirely. So, like I said, cloud app security really goes beyond Microsoft 365. What you see over here, if the access level is shared with public, for example, or just say, it's being shared externally, the file type is a spreadsheet and it's called confidential IBAN, then, remove all external users, for example, inherit any parent permissions, and remove specific collaborators. Well, right now I can't, because I don't have that information right now, and no, it already has a sensitivity label, so let's leave it at that. So this is basically how you create such a policy. Just looking at the time, so these are very comprehensive policies you can use, and as you can see, there's a lot of built-in policies as well. There's for example, a built-in policy to protect you against ransomware. Oh, that's over here. Unusual file downloads by users, which might be a internal risk event. You also have built-in. So, take a look at all those really very nifty policies. Just to end this one, alerts. The alerting, I think the name speaks for itself. Basically, over here you have the alerts being generated by your policies. So over here I have a file which is and as you can see over here, if you really compare this to the internal Microsoft 365 dashboards, this is really more comprehensive. I can see what kind of file was shared. It was called a demo. It isn't a file, by the way. It's a folder. It's being shared with external users. I can see what kind of apps are being used by the user right now. So in my case, that's one, Azure, etc. I can have a history of the action. I'm not sure if this one. So no, just one. So I can really drill down based on that event, on the alert, what happened, and perhaps I can even, for example, just again remove all those collaborators, for example. So there's a difference between collaborators, which are basically all people working on this, but I just want to remove the external ones. So let me just remove my external ones. So this was kind of an overview of cloud app security. It's very, very comprehensive. I can't a couple of hours won't be enough to really show you every scenario you can have. I think that the bottom line is you can use cloud app security with Microsoft 365 to get a very comprehensive look at your environment, to set up very comprehensive data loss prevention rules, have your sessions being monitored towards your cloud apps, including cloud app Office 365. And let me just switch back for now to my presentation. Just one sec. And over here. So yeah, these are the things I just showed you. As the slides will be shared with you, of course, so you can have an overview as well. I'll just go to So just a recap. When to use what. First thing to know, of course, is MCAS isn't cheap. Like you saw already in the overview for the licensing, it comes with Office 365 E5 or Microsoft 365 compliancy add-ons, so it really isn't cheap. If you are able to use it, then it's probably better to use Microsoft Cloud App Security instead of the built-in Microsoft 365 things like DLP and event logs, audit logs, because it gives a very comprehensive look, a holistic view of your Microsoft 365 environment. And it does offer some things which Office 365 doesn't offer. For example, that session-based control. That's really something which Azure AD and MCAS offer you to really have control of what happens with the session between a user and Office 365. There's more granularity in the policies. So, for example, blocking downloads. I only showed you one little bit of that, but you can really go, for example, into MIME types for specific documents or specific users or specific apps, and you can really drill down where the sensitivity labels basically just say block download, for example, or allow web only. So you've got more options there. There's a lot of insights from high to basically very, very low. So that's not offered by Office 365 as well, of course. And you have the Power Platform integration. So you, like I said, you can have some escalation part where your alert is being routed to the Power Platform to really being picked up that way. It goes both ways, by the way. You also have connectors towards MCAS, so you can even from a Power App connect to MCAS, for example, to get an overview of your alerts, etc. Okay, well, having said that, if you want more information, there's a lot of information on that, of course. Here's a couple of links. And yeah, the first one is probably the best to really delve into. There's a lot of trial environments there as well. So 30-day trials, you can create your own snapshots and go work with MCAS as well. Yeah, and with that, it's nearly, well, here 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock at your end. So with that, I want to thank you for your attention.
Great stuff. Thank you, Albert. That was really good session. And in fact, I learned quite a lot, lots of things in there. And I think you know, a few comments on the chat window as well. So yeah, really appreciate that. That was really good. And I think I mean, I've got probably a couple of questions, but I'll probably let the attendees ask. And you know, please feel free, attendees, to unmute and turn on your camera if you prefer. And I know there was a comment in the chat window whilst the attendees do that. I think the comment from Damien Andrews in terms of, in fact, Damien, if you're still on the call, if you might as well just ask a question, go for it.
It was just more about what I see more frequently these days is there's less of a requirement for log ingestion from the edge devices because, well, two reasons really. One, the rich telemetry from MDE brings everything in and gives you full sight of your shadow IT. And the other one was, of course, with the advent of COVID, less and less fewer people were actually going via the organization's firewall.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
if you were ingested from the firewall, you were getting pretty much dead ends.
Yeah, well, I agree. And sorry, please continue.
No, I was just curious if that was other people were seeing also, and I think you were just about to say yes.
Yeah, well, this is one of the things which did surprise me when MCAS was first released or bought over by Microsoft and then released. To be honest, was the dependency on that log shipping from firewalls, etc. Because even then, we pre-corona, we already had people working from any location whatsoever, not always using VPNs to connect to the corporate network. So a lot of information wasn't coming through to MCAS, so that really did bother me. I don't have a solution for that, of course, but what I'm seeing right now, what I said at the beginning of the session, if you have things like Windows Defender ATP, again, licensing, of course, be aware, but if you do have that, then your telemetry will be coming from the devices themselves. But please note, of course, that everything I showed you and everything I talked about really is about your internal users. So it really doesn't say anything about any guest users or any other users, of course, or any device which isn't part of your domain or whatever. So if you still have a user which is using his or her private device, for example, and it isn't being routed to the firewall, or is simply just going directly to Office 365 on a device which isn't registered, yeah, then that telemetry won't be getting into MCAS as well. So yeah, I agree completely. I don't have any solution yet, and I probably think Microsoft should provide one, but there's a little gap in there still. So I think bottom line, don't be fooled by the dashboard. There's probably more shadow IT there than you think.
Thank you.
That's good. I guess it's a choice of tooling there as well, isn't that? In terms of whether you're a small or large organization, depending on what systems you collect the logs from. But yeah, carry on, Damien. Sir, I think you were going to say something.
No, I was just saying thank you.
You're welcome.
That's great. I guess I had one question. So, I mean, just looking at what you were showing in the MCAS, like the kind of the inventory of all the activities and everything else that was happening. Is there a kind of a Power BI dashboard to surface some of that data in a more kind of a, I say user friendly, but more from a business side of things? Because typically it's the one I find anyway.
Yeah, how to put this politically correct? I think if you look at the dashboards by Microsoft, there's a couple of versions. You have either the dashboards by themselves, then you have third parties which they bought and then just put the Microsoft logo on top, like MCAS and like information protection, etc., which look even better. Look better, and then you have things like in Spark right now we created a security dashboard which taps into things like Sentinel, but also MCAS and also the security graph and provides you with a sort of like a Power BI overview, really for CISOs, security information officers, because, like you said, it's an abundance of information, and it's a lot of dashboards. So, short answer, I don't think. I'd have to look into that. I think you probably could have some sort of integration. You have to build it yourself.
Yeah, I was thinking more from a connectors side of thing. If there are any connectors, I'm sure.
Oh, there are. Yeah.
Yeah, so it would be good, I think, because certainly, I think when I train some of the admins, typically, and like you make the point that audit log tends to be the first port of call to go and check on any activities for somebody, say, who's new to M365. But clearly, what you showed, that was just like a very sophisticated, kind of a wide, single, unified view, if I can use those words, to kind of get everything in one place. But obviously, that's with the cost that comes, right? So, and if it's a small organization, I think certainly makes sense to have an E5 to be able to get that efficiency on doing that. But I know, that's a good one. Well, okay, now thanks for that, Albert.
Thank you.
Yeah, I got introduction anyways, but I think thanks everyone for being here for the first session from Albert, and obviously we got a second session now from Serge Luca from Belgium, and obviously, like I say, is all things Office apps and services in the world of SharePoint, SQL, and now Power Platform over the last few years, and you know everything in terms of the content and everything else. So really grateful and really thankful as well, Serge, for being here, and kind of on the topic of advanced BPM tooling side of things for Power Automate, Power Platform. But also, I think for those of you who don't know, Serge obviously has been around for more than 20 odd years, I think, or even probably more than that. And
100 years.
Yeah, it's still young, right? and 15-time MVP. So really, kind of, I like everybody else, I first, blogs and content that I look up is Serge, and really that's how I've kind of even developed my career as well, partly to learn things around the Power Automate and Power Platform, alongside other folks in the community as well. So yeah, welcome here to M365 UK, Serge, and yeah, over to you.
Welcome, Chirag, and thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so welcome to this advanced business process management with Power Automate and the BPM Toolkit session. My name is Dr. Flo. I'm also known as Serge Luca. So as Chirag mentioned, I'm a business application Power Platform MVP, and I'm based in Brussels. I have a small company called Power Platform Associate with another MVP specialized in Power BI, Isabel van Kampenhout. And I'm also the creator of the BPM Toolkit, which is something that I will demonstrate, which is free. So this is not a commercial presentation, right? The tool is open source, so you can download it, you can use it with the Power Platform. So my job is providing Power Platform services. So I provide Power Apps training, Power Automate training, Power Platform governance training, which is a very popular training that I give. And then I start working with my customer on project, and then they work alone. That's what I do every day. So I would like to start this presentation with a case study. So in 2020, a big company in the aviation industry came to me and they asked me to implement or to help them implementing the HR process, business process. And the requirement for this HR business process was very, very complex. So basically they had 60 type of HR requests. So an HR request could be something like someone want to take a part-time, or someone want to work half-time, or three-quarter time, something like this. So they had 60 type of HR requests. They have 40 type of workflows, business process. All approval process could take up to 1 year. Most of the time it took only 1 or 2 months. Also, people, so stakeholders involved in the business process, like supervisors and user, want to be able to have an holistic view of the business process. So they want a kind of dashboard, including HR people, okay? And all of this are not or were not available in Power Automate. And if we take a look at one of the HR business process, which is the leave request. So let's say someone in the company want to make a leave request for medical reasons. So someone in Paris. Well, this leave request must be validated by a doctor in the company. Then the legal department must check if this request is a right or just a possibility. Then it needs to be validated by a line manager, then by a first line HR in Paris, then by a supervisor in Paris, then supervisor in Brussels, then by director in Brussels. Then a document will be generated with the decision. And of course, this document is fully secured, right? And sometimes people need to be able to go backward in the business process. Sometimes you have to go backwards from here to here, or from here to here, etc. And this is something that Power Automate out of the box could not achieve. And initially the customer wanted to use the Power Platform, right? So because the Power Platform was free, it was part of Office 365, so Microsoft 365. They had Nintex on-prem before, right? So they were very happy with Nintex, and they want to move to the Power Platform because they're moving to the cloud. So they quickly faced some limitation. And limitation in Power Automate were the following when it comes to BPM, Business Process Management, which is we still have the same limitation since the early beginning of the platform. Flow duration is 30 days. So after 30 days, a flow stop running, okay? Which is really annoying because this business process can take several months. So you go beyond the limits of the platform, right? So the solution is use the BPM Toolkit. That's what I'm going to illustrate. Also, a flow approval duration is 30 days. It's almost 30 days. So if a flow asks someone to approve, and the same flow wait for this person to approve, then after 30 days the flow stop running. Okay, so this is really annoying. So there are workarounds for this. In 2018, I proposed a pattern called the controller pattern. So you can still take a look at this pattern. But now what I'm going to show you, which is the BPM toolkit, is an evolution of this controller pattern. Also, there's no state machine in Power Automate. So what is a state machine? Basically, a state machine means that you need to be able to go from one state to another state. It's a go-to. You must be able to go backward as well. So we cannot do that in Power Automate. So let's say you have the following flow here with several levels of approval. So you send an approval here, okay, and you wait for someone to approve or a group of people to approve, and then followed by a second level, okay, followed by a third level. This looks simple, but in the real world, it's more complex because first you need to check if people approved in the first level. So if people approve, then you can move to the second level. If people approve, so if the outcome is approved, then you can move to the third level, right? This is easy so far. Problem is, what happens if someone rejects? How can you get backward? How can you get backward? I mean, you cannot. Well, there are workarounds. And in 2017, I wrote a blog post illustrating the kind of state machine. So you can put that in the loop and analyze the state and run everything all the time, right? So you can provide, you can put that in the loop. The thing is, it's complicated and you still have the 30 days limitation of the flow, okay? And that's one of the reasons why I did create the BPM toolkit. Also, when a flow starts, so when you have a complex business process, and if for any reason, technical reason, the flow stop in the middle, the flow crash, for instance, then you cannot restart the flow from where it was waiting. You have to restart the flow from the beginning, which does not make sense in the business process, because if someone wants to make a leave request and these go to different steps, okay, and then at some point you crash, you don't want to restart everything from scratch. I mean, right? So the business will not allow that. I've put that in the BPM toolkit. I will skip this one, but the last one, which is no task delegation, is the following business case. So people are supposed to be able to approve things. So manager, supervisor are supposed to be able to approve things. What if they go to holidays? They must be able to delegate their tasks to someone else, right? And when they come back, they need to be able to keep their task back. And this someone else could also be able to delegate to another person. This is basic business, but we don't have that in Power Automate. Okay, so, and I've put that in the BPM toolkit. So now let's take a look at the BPM toolkit. So again, this is not commercial, right? So this is open source. You can download the tool, you can visualize the source, you can do whatever you want with the source, right? And it's fully written with the Power Platform. So what is the BPM toolkit? So it's 100% written with the Power Platform. It's a tool written by a pro. It's not a tool written by a citizen developer. So I wrote every single line of the BPM toolkit, right? So it was also a way for me to experiment the limitation of the platform. We'll get back to this later. So 100% written with the Power Platform. It's free, it's open source, it's on GitHub. The business can create a workflow. I will illustrate that later. So the business does not have to use Power Automate. It can write a workflow somewhere in the SharePoint list. There is native support for state machine. So actually, I did create a kind of workflow engine on top of Power Automate by using Power Automate. So I did provide state machine, so you will see that. Also, the workflow can change at runtime. Sometimes, even though the business process already start, you may want to modify the business logic. So you can do that with the BPM toolkit. There's no workflow duration limit. Have native task delegation. You can create your own custom approval form. I will get back to the security because security is very complex in HR. So I made it generic. So I call that pipeline security. It's fully visual. You can visually see the business process. So you can interact with the business process. There is a robotic process automation integration. So if you have an RPA tool, which is a tool that runs on the desktop, well, the BPM toolkit can invoke this RPA tool. And you don't need premium license because that was one of the requirements. My customer did not want to buy premium license for every employee. It was an Office 365 site, right? So they wanted to use SharePoint Online as a database. Now, I mentioned before that the business can create its own workflow. So basically, in the BPM toolkit, we have a SharePoint list called Meta Workflow, where the business can create its own workflow. So these are 3 workflows here. So I take this one, work time and leave for Maastricht. And you can see that the business can create the steps here. Step 0, 1, 2, 3. And here we can see that step 0, the system will ask this team to review the case. And if they say it's negative, so they don't approve or it's not okay, then they will move to another state. So we can implement state machine here. You see, so we have different steps. We can specify the type of action expected. It could be feedback, it could be approval, it could be review, it could be please generate a document on the fly and put all the information from the SharePoint list in a document template and store the document template somewhere in a secure location in SharePoint Online, for instance. So you can create your own custom action. So there are predefined action in the BPM toolkit, but you can create your own custom action and put that in the workflow. The way I implement that is, well, I've called that the case management pattern. So basically the idea is you need a first list, could be a table, but here I've implemented that in SharePoint. Let's call that a request list. So that's where all the HR requests will end up. And there is a case list. So this is the perimeter of the BPM toolkit. Okay, so in the BPM toolkit, we expect a case list. So for each request, we'll have a case. So the system will take the request and will put it in a case. And the case will go through a case lifecycle. So we have a case lifecycle list. So the system will analyze the associated workflow and will generate steps in the case lifecycle. Step 1, step 2, step 3. New request could be custom request with custom columns will become a case, and the case will go through a lifecycle. Okay, so this is the core logic of the BPM toolkit. It's based on a pattern that I've called the case management pattern. There are tables. Okay, so here I've implemented this data model in SharePoint list, but I have another version, less advanced, which is based on Dataverse. I could have implemented that with SQL Server. Okay, so now let's go through a demo. I took screenshot to make it faster, but this is my SharePoint test site. It's a test environment. And in this test environment, we have 3 pictures here: the workflow command center, your dashboard, and the part-time request. So any employee in the company who want to submit a part-time request will get here. They will click on this picture, and a Power Apps form will show up, right? So this is a custom form. It's a custom application. So it's not part of the BPM toolkit, but this application will submit information to the BPM toolkit. So I will go very fast through this this application. So there are different screens, it's kind of wizard. They specify what they want to do, why they want a part-time. Okay, put comment, etc. At some point, they can save the part-time as a draft. So the BPM Toolkit understands the concept of draft request. So they can review that later on, they can edit that later on, or they can submit that to approval. Okay, and then people can still add additional stakeholders into the pipeline if they want. But to each type of request, there is a dedicated workflow defined in a SharePoint list. So then they submit this, okay, submit it. It's stored in the request list. It will go to the case list. So the BPM Toolkit will start running on it. And then HR will go to the dedicated place, which is called the Workflow Command Center. So that's the place for HR, the HR department. So this is for the employee, this is for HR, and HR will be able to visualize the business process. So each line here is a different request. You see? So we can see this is a part-time request for this person, and it has been submitted on this time. We can see the different steps. The first step, we see that the system is waiting here. It's orange, means waiting. Okay, there will be additional steps here. They are in gray, so they have not been reached yet. We have filters, so we can filter, so HR can filter on all the approve request, the waiting request, the rejected request, the stop, because we can stop some business process as well. I will show that later. There is a search. Okay, so this is the request that I've just submitted. Okay, so the request is waiting for this group of people. These people are part of HR to review the case. If I scroll down, you will see that I have other business process running here. You see, green means that people say it's fine for me, so the system went to the next one, and this guy here say it's not okay, but still the system went to the next one. That was the business, the logic of the workflow. You can see here there is a red star. This means that the system is waiting for this person to act on the business process, but the red star means that originally the request has been sent to another person who did put a delegation. So this means that it's actually a delegated person. Okay. So we have a holistic view of the business process, of the cases. And then as HR, I can say, okay, I'm going to work on this. I click here and I start running on this case. Okay. Here you see a message which is you cannot review your own request because I'm the guy who did submit a request, but I was also the guy who did review the request. So normally by default, the BPM Toolkit does not allow you to review your own request, of course. Right? But there is a parameter somewhere that allow you to do that in test mode. So now I'm HR and I can start working on this case. I'm part of this team. That's why this approve or reject button are available. Okay, so if I click on OK, then a window will show up. I can put a comment, I will confirm, and this becomes green, and the system goes to the next step. And based on the workflow logic, this guy will get a notification, and this guy will be asked to review the case and say yes or no. This is probably a manager somewhere, not a member of HR. Okay. So I will show you what this guy will see, because this guy is not part of HR. So this person cannot see this, of course. Also, we have defined the concept of ownership. So an HR person can take ownership of a business process so that the business process will be logged. You can see here, there is a picture illustrating that this business process has been logged by this person here, who's member of HR. This is I'm a member of HR. I've logged this business process. So we can filter on this. We can take ownership of a business process, which is something which is not part of Power Automate. See? So if I click on this, the system will say, hey, this case has been logged by this person. Okay. Now, if I click here, I will take ownership of this. So let's click on this, and you can see, no, you're owner of this request. And in dashboard, my colleague will see that I'm actually working with it. So it's a kind of locking. If you want, somewhere in the BPM toolkit, you can specify that for some, you can dedicate a specific channel in Teams for some type of business request. Okay, you can say this type of business request will get this private channel so that people of HR can start discussing your case. So when the case is created, automatically a new discussion will start on a specific channel in Teams. If people don't want to use Teams, they can always put messages here. So they can create a message and the message will show up here so that their colleague will see the message. So you can choose Teams or you can choose an internal message. Benefit of using internal message is all the HR messages, so conversation within HR, can be archived, which is not the case if the discussion starts in Teams. Okay. Okay, now let's say I'm a user, I'm the user who did submit the part-time request, and I want to follow this request. So any employee in the company can go to your dashboard application. So they click here and they will see the dashboard. And here I can see all the requests that I did submit. See? So this is my last request. So the request is currently waiting for this guy to review it. I cannot see what other people did. I cannot see if this group say yes or no. Okay, I mean, HR did not want people to see the details of this. You just know where it is as an employee. Of course, you can filter on different type of requests. So we have filter, you can search to your requests. You can also, if you want, you can stop the business process. If you click here, you can say, oh, the request that I did submit, I want to stop it. You just click here and the whole business process will stop here and it will show up in black as well in the HR dashboard. Now, this is what employee who submit requests will see in their dashboard, but I can also be a manager. So I might have tasks. So as a manager, somewhere this application, I can see my task. So this is my task. Okay, so there is a part-time request for this person submitted at that time. Okay, the type is this. So if I click here, detail or comment, I can see the comment coming from previous approvers, if there are any. Okay. Also, if I want, in this application, I can delegate my task. I want to create a delegation. I'm delegating all my tasks, to this person from this day to that day. Now, let's say I'm saying yes, it's okay. I'm approving this this request, fine. Then you will see that this guy did approve, so it's green, and the system will go to the next step, waiting for this. This is a person, so it's not a group, to approve or reject or to review. So this person, well, okay, this is a person. Let's say this person does not react, and this person did not put any delegation. I'm HR because only HR can see this. So I'm clicking here, I'm taking the case, and then I can say, hey, I can do many things. What I can say is, I want to skip this step. So you can skip a step, which is something that you cannot do in Power Automate. I'm skipping this. Oh, it goes there. Or you can also redirect. If you click here, you will be able to redirect to a previous step. If you want, I'm going to step 0, and you get there. So this is state machine. And let's say that in the workflow, you define that if this group of people here say no, then we are going to skip all this step and we are going to go to the supervisor directly. So if you say no, click here, no, because this is not legal. Okay, this become red and this will become orange. That's state machine. Okay, so we have been waiting for state machine since the early beginning of Power Automate. We still don't have it, but this is something that the BPM Toolkit provides for free. So it's possible, right? Okay, so just for, if you remember, the go-to is implemented like this in the workflow definition. So if this is this, then go-to, there is a if go-to column here. It go to here, so this is here. I mean, it's easy, right? Of course, in the future I will provide a shell on top of that. But anyway, this is already fine. Now, let's say you can do other things as well. As HR, I can say, hey, I want to insert I want to put someone else in the pipeline. So you have the option to insert a new step in the workflow. Insert a step. You can put a user here, confirm, and then you will see the new step here will be inserted here. You see? Here. Of course, when you click here, you can see more details about the action. You can see the notes, you can see comment, etc. So yes, you can change the workflow at runtime. Okay. Also, something which is very, very important when you deal with business process, which is permission matrix. There's no, for instance, in this case, there's no just one HR. There are different HR people. You have different people in different countries because this company is an international company, but also that some people are specialized for different type of case, right? So some people are certified for different type of case. If a director asks for a pay raise, for instance, I mean, only some people at HR can see this, right? So that means how to implement a permission matrix natively. So example here, you can see just for this type of request, work time and leave, we have people HR in Brussels, in Maastricht, in the Netherlands, so in Paris. So there are 3 cities in this company. So people in Brussels, so HR in Brussels, can review or can read and write information submitted by employee in Brussels and by employee in Luxembourg. But HR Maastricht, for this type of request, can only read and write information submitted by employee in Maastricht. Paris can only read and write information submitted by people in Paris, you see? So when you deal with business process, you must be able to define the permission matrix. There is always a permission matrix, okay? So that's part of BPM, right? So, and I put that natively in the BPM toolkit. And well, I will illustrate later how I did implement that, of course. When I did a demo of the BPM toolkit for the Power Automate team, one of the first things they asked me is, hey, why don't you implement an integration with robotic process automation? So if you take a look at this video, and of course the slide will be shared, you will see that you can create steps in the BPM toolkit, a step that will interact with any application running on your desktop. Okay, so now technically, what are the modules? Again, everything is written with the Power Platform. Okay, so initially, and that's the more advanced version. The most advanced version is based on SharePoint list because my customer did not want to buy premium license. But I've started working last year, well, in April, on the Dataverse version. Implementation is Power Automate. There are something like almost 100 flows. I could have used Logic Apps, but I mean, Power Automate was absolutely fine. And then we have the core component. So in the core component written with Power Automate, all of them, we have the workflow runtime. So the workflow runtime is the engine, the workflow engine that I did write with Power Automate that provides state machine, among others. We have analytics component, we have tracing, archiving, a workflow optimizer. If you submit the same request to the same person in 2 consecutive steps, I mean, the system could optimize this, for instance, right? So you need to put some intelligence. Workflow generator that generates steps, security module that's for the permission matrix, task delegation, notification, etc. These are the core modules. Oops. On top of that, I have the UI modules like the process dashboard that you saw and the My dashboard that you have seen. But this can be extended, of course, so you can create your own custom version of this. But all of this is very generic. It's 100% Power Platform code. In the new version that I'm currently working on, there are different packages, different solutions, as you can see, data layer, extension library, core, UI, etc. 93 flows. I think there's a little bit more than 93. There are many child flow. Okay, so child flow called by other flows because it's a very generic application. There are 3 Power Apps Canva application. And the first version is the BPM Toolkit for SharePoint. This is the most advanced version, the more mature version. It was supposed to be in production in June, but due to some healthy problems, I had to postpone that to the end of the year. I have another version which is based on Dataverse and another one based on Teams, Dataverse for Teams. Of course, the storage for the first one is SharePoint list. I use unique permission everywhere. Okay, so during the whole business process, because security is very important. This is HR, so it's a more sensitive information that you can find in a company. So during the whole review process, I use unique permission. Only some group of people plus the person who submit the request has the permission to see its own data. And when it's completed, then the information is removed from the BPM Toolkit and stored in one archive, which is based on CDS. And only some people need to be able to review the archive, like audit people or internal audit, something like this. So for the BPM Toolkit for Dataverse, it's Dataverse, and Teams, it's Dataverse for Teams, which is free. I still have a few issues with Dataverse for Teams, but overall it works very well. So I expect that this will be in production by the end of the year. Even though some companies are already using it in production, so it looks like it's robust, right? So end of 2021 and yes, end of 2020. But you can download that from the GitHub if you want. Okay, so this illustrates the Teams version, the organization of the team version. Logically, here are the core modules. So when someone submits a case, so a request, there is a module called Workflow Launcher that starts. And the Workflow Launcher analyzes the workflow definition in your SharePoint list and generates steps in the case lifecycle list or table. And then this triggers the workflow runtime. You can download that from GitHub at this location. In the benefit of putting that in GitHub is I have to make sure that the code is clean because other people will review it, right? The setup guide is available. So you have a setup guide, a PDF document plus a video that illustrates how to install it. There is a developer guide that shows you how to create your own custom request and how to interact with the BPM Toolkit as well. Okay, so you can take a look at this video if you want that illustrate the feature, and this one illustrate the architecture. And we still have some time, right, Chirag? Chirag, are you there?
Yeah, sorry, I'm there. I couldn't find the mute button. Yeah, we got time. We got time.
Got time? Okay. So I would like to illustrate, for instance, let's go through, yeah, something which is This is the solution package, and I'm going to show you the runtime, which is the core of the core. So workflow runtime. Here we go. And this is here that the state machine is implemented. Okay. As in every flow, I have a try and a catch block. So if something wrong happened, and that's the case for every flow of the BPM toolkit, everything is logged somewhere, and I have a monitoring application that I will show you later that gives some feedback to the business. So basically, I check the approval status, you see, and I check if there is a go-to. If the system finds that there is a go-to in the current steps, it will try to find a go-to. If there's no go-to, it will try to find the next step. Okay, so you see, try to find the next step. If there's no next step, it will stop the workflow and set the workflow status to final. Otherwise, it will try to find the next step. If you find a stop action, the system will stop. Otherwise, you see, the system will stop. Otherwise, it will try to find the next action. It will set it to waiting, and then the system will check if the person in charge of doing something is a group or it's a person. See? So yeah, that's the state machine workflow, which is very generic. So it was possible. So you don't have to use .NET or something more complex to create a state machine workflow. This really works. So I don't want to be too boring. Just one thing. There are a bit more than 93 flows. So, you know, shit can happen, right? And these are mission critical business process. So we need to be able to monitor what's going on. And that's one of my advice is anytime you create an application, a Power Platform application, write a monitoring application that will monitor if thing goes well or goes wrong. So here I can see first that all the services are running fine. So the one that there's no single workflow that has been stopped, because you never know what could happen in the cloud, right? So it checked the 100 workflows every 30 minutes or every 20 minutes. And if something goes wrong, like 18th of April, something went wrong for this business request in this flow, then I can click here and I can go directly to the debugger, right? So it was because the problem here, if I click, you won't see anything because the system keeps the debugging information only for 28 days, right? So, but still, if something goes wrong, IT can click and see exactly what went wrong, right? So it won't work here, but perhaps normally not. Anyway, does not really matter. The point is always monitor your business process, your flow, your application, right? So that is very, very important to provide this kind of thing. Okay, my dream is to have one BPM toolkit that will grab information from different companies. So if you authorize a system, then you will get, of course, in an anonymous way, the monitoring information coming from other BPM toolkit. So you can see, hey, somewhere in the world, there were a lot of issues with this specific flow. So there's something wrong happening with this flow. It's quite weak. So we need to improve that. You see? So you have to do that because what I've noticed is that most developers hide the incident, right? So something wrong happened, okay, but the business don't notice, but there is an impact somewhere. So somewhere someone is hurt by this failure, right? So as the early is the best, right? So monitoring. Okay. Also in the business process here, the last step is to generate a document based off the data submitted by the user and to put it in a specific location. So we call that a decision. Okay, so the system does that on the fly. And to do this, it was very complex because I had to deal with many metadata that need to be stored in the document. So for each type of request, you have something like 30 word template maintained by the business, because people have different employee status. So the legal documents, so the decision is different depending on your employee status, depending on where you are from. If you're in Maastricht, if you're in Paris, if you are in Brussels, the document will be different. So I've defined a kind of document generator based on QuickPart. So QuickPart helped me a lot, right, to do this generic document generation. So I think I don't want to be too boring. So I think if you have any question.
Thanks, Serge. I can't see any, but I think, yeah, I mean, I think attendees, please unmute yourselves or even turn on the camera. And yeah, feel free to ask questions. But I think that's a great session. I mean, I think, you know, obviously I've seen some bits of it before, and I guess just while the attendees kind of really come forward, I think I probably have one question. In terms of the storage wise.
Yeah, storage, yes.
In terms of like, because if this is like a HR process, right? So, you know, if you're kind of using the Dataverse, then in terms of the storage wise, let's say if it's 1 gig storage that we want to go for to create this environment, then is that kind of based on the, and I'm trying to avoid the word licensing here because I don't want that to take over at all.
You will start a nuclear discussion, yes.
I don't want to go there. But what's the approach there? Like in that case, if it's a 1 gig database, you know, what kind of, do you go based on the users, number of users in that environment who's going to access the licenses, or a different type of license to go for that?
Yeah, so indeed, well, this version is SharePoint based, so for me the storage is almost free. I mean, and it works. And so far I don't see the benefit of using Dataverse, even though I like Dataverse because I like relational database. But for this, it looks like SharePoint is very nice. Now, if you are going to use, because 1 gigabyte of database is a lot. So I mean, you don't often see 1 gigabyte of database, right? So it's a huge database because this is only record. Yeah. Document, of course, are stored in SharePoint document library. So for this kind of thing, storage is free. So I mean, 1 gigabyte of database for only single records, I mean, you will probably not hit this limit. Probably not. Because moreover, this information is archived in another Dataverse. So maybe this other Dataverse could, I mean, honestly, I don't have any idea of the volume, right?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that would depend.
Yeah, it depends. Even the business, because I often ask, how many transactions will you have? They cannot answer. They don't know. It's unknown territory. Nobody knows in the company. It's still paper-based. So
no, that's right. I think it was more from a perspective of, like, you know, typically, I mean, again, I get this a lot where folks are not used to with the Power Platform environment or even SharePoint for that matter. And there's always that argument that, you know, because it's a HR related system, therefore, again, from my SQL days, it makes sense to have a dedicated environment and storage. And I was thinking more for, you know, the other teams Dataverse or just the Dataverse, right? So in that case, the IT folks will say, well, let's provision a database, give or take, let's say 1 gig.
Yeah, 1 gig. The thing is, I have an issue with the Dataverse for Teams. And the reason is that here I'm using unique permission, right? And you cannot have unique permission in Dataverse for Team.
Yeah.
You can have that in Dataverse, but not really in Dataverse for Team.
Sure.
And for this kind of business, I mean, Dataverse or SharePoint are way better. I have more flexibility when it comes to security. But yes, normally you should have a dedicated environment with one database, and you would need at least, maybe 1 gigabyte should be enough. Of course, there is an archiving part. Then I don't know. I think after 1 year, you have a big idea of how much volume you need.
Yeah.
Now, keep in mind that the volume in Dataverse is expensive, right? I think it should be something like 30 euros per gigabyte per month for each additional gigabyte. So, I mean, it's way, way, way more expensive than in SQL Azure. But it's still interesting because Microsoft manage everything for you. You don't need a DBA. You just pay for the storage, and that's it. You don't have to do anything else. So it's interesting. So it's a SaaS approach against a PaaS approach. But that's what I would do. Yes, it's a dedicated environment with one database, at least 1 gigabyte to start with. And yeah, I mean, okay. So the idea is people, so because this company does not have a budget for premium license, but the idea is if for any reason they have a budget for premium license, they should be able to upgrade their business on Dataverse, on the pay version of Dataverse. So there is a migration path from the SharePoint version to Dataverse. I don't expect too much from Dataverse for Team in this specific case.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. No, that's great. Thanks for answering that.
Yes, and yes, indeed, in the chat I see. Don't forget unique item permission limit in SharePoint, of course, and that's one of the reasons why we move that to the archive as soon as we can. Yes, yeah.
Right. Any questions? Anybody else out there?
Yeah, so there will be new. Well, the backlog is quite big, so there will be a lot of new features. And I expect that this the dashboard, this dashboard will probably be re-implemented with Power BI. Okay, right. This will be re-implemented with Power BI, but this will remain in Power Apps. And the reason is that people want to get more advanced filtering capabilities with search, even though we have search here, but they want more. They want to be able to select several business process and to approve all of them in one shot. You see, thing like this. So I expect more Power BI in the
That's great. That's great to hear that. Looking forward to that. Good stuff. Good. Okay, so I'll probably I just want to say thanks, Serge. I think for giving up your time, and as ever, always looking to see the developments in this space, and I'm sure many, and including on this call, if anybody has got other experiences on this, and if this is the first time, definitely can't recommend more than what it is. Go and take a look, start it off, and there's tons of blogs and tweets and things around this, so hopefully you'll find it beneficial. And I think it's your efforts there, Serge, because obviously it costs time and energy, right?
It's a game. It's a game. It's like a video game. I mean,
good stuff. Thanks.
Thank you for having me.
No, yeah, pleasure. And I think I'll just kind of, if you like, just let the attendees kind of let them know that, obviously slides will be available as I post on the links. I think we've had some feedback already for Albert's session, so please do that, because I think it really helps Albert and Serge to really even optimize or add some things in there. So the more constructive feedback, the better. So thanks for that, attendees. And in terms of for where we are, and I'm really looking forward to. I've kind of have a few words with few folks, and for next month, we're back on the 13th. As it stands, it looks like online, but I have been led by Microsoft themselves as well. So hopefully we may get a venue, and if we do, that'll be really good. So yeah, watch out for the updates on that. And I think in the meantime, obviously, those are the URLs there, and watch the space, as they say. So hopefully, fingers crossed, if things are going okay in UK, and then we should be all face to face. But if also you're interested in speaking or even just share experiences of your environment in your place on any topic really with Microsoft 365, then as ever, you're always welcome to submit a session. I've got a couple of sessions already which I need to get back to them, so I'm hoping to introduce new speakers as well, but I've also got more folks from Europe as well. But yeah, I think it's all happening in the next 3 months up to Christmas anyways, and especially with Ignite and all these things happening. So there's a lot to look forward to. And other than that, I just want to say thanks to everyone for being here today on this hot day, and hopefully you found this very useful, and hopefully can apply this in your places. And as ever, I think Serge, Albert, they're all on social media and everything else. So just reach out to them, or if anything I can help you with, then also reach out to myself as well. But other than that, look after yourself. Please take care, and until next time. Thank you all.
Great. Thanks, Chirag.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Albert. Thanks, Serge.